The study of the philosophy of mind is rooted in a rich history of trying to balance scientific understanding with philosophical inquiry. It grapples with two major ambitions: demystifying the causal operations of the mind and confronting skepticism about understanding other minds. The naturalistic approach has dominated, questioning if elements like thoughts and desires can integrate with scientific frameworks. Dualism, the view that mind and body are distinct, has faced critical challenges, especially concerning how mental and physical interactions occur. Most modern philosophers of mind reject dualism, favoring theories that see mental states as closely tied to physical states, though debates continue about whether consciousness fits into this framework. Logical behaviorism suggests that mental states are simply behavioral dispositions, not hidden internal causes. This perspective aimed to incorporate mental discussions into natural science by removing ghostly causes. However, it struggled with the concept of self-knowledge, undermining the idea of an innate authority in our thoughts and feelings. While some mental states, like dispositions, can be behaviorally defined, sudden or episodic mental events seem to require an understanding beyond mere behavior. Critics argue that behaviorism fails to account for the complexity of mental processes, leading to a shift in focus towards cognitive and identity theories in modern philosophy and psychology. With behaviorism and dualism waning, identity theory emerged, linking mental states to physical brain states. There are two main forms: type identity theory, which equates mental state types with specific brain states, and token identity theory, which acknowledges that different physical states can realize the same mental state across different individuals or species. Early hopes hinged on neuroscience confirming one-to-one correlations between mental and brain states. However, the theory faced challenges, particularly due to the diverse physiologies capable of hosting similar mental states, implying multiple realizations. This complexity prompted further exploration of how mental states might be tied to physical processes. Functionalism offers an alternative by viewing mental states as defined by their roles or functions, akin to artifacts like transmitters or biological concepts like genes. This approach accounts for the multiplicity of physical states that can realize the same mental state, emphasizing how mental structures facilitate interactions and behaviors. Functionalism aligns well with common sense intuitions about causality and psychological inference, allowing mental states to exert influence over each other. However, it faces criticism for not fully capturing conscious experiences' felt nature, and for relying on the contentious analytic-synthetic distinction, which categorizes statements based on pure meaning versus empirical truth. Theory reinterprets functionalism by suggesting that mental concepts gain meaning through their roles in broader theoretical frameworks, much like scientific theories. Instead of focusing on direct analysis, it views understanding mental concepts as grasping the overarching causal theories they fit into. This approach maintains functionalism's advantages while sidestepping its pitfalls, like the challenge of capturing consciousness, by allowing for recognitional capacities linked to theoretical constructs. Though widely accepted, theory invites debate on the extent of our folk psychological commitments and whether our intuitive theories about mind and behavior could prove fundamentally flawed. This exploration also touches on significant psychological perspectives, specifically addressing how scientific psychology aligns with common-sense psychological views. Despite challenges, such as Freud's contentious theories, this union strives for coherence, suggesting that our innate theory of mind may enrich scientific understanding without drastic overhaul. Realism, in both psychology and philosophy, emphasizes theories' roles in genuinely explaining causal mechanisms, driving scientific progress. This perspective contrasts with anti-realist viewpoints that prioritize empirical adequacy. The goal is to foster a harmonious relationship between folk and scientific psychology, nurturing an understanding of mind that is both sophisticated and intuitive. Although its philosophical counterpart faced decline, methodological behaviorism held significant sway in psychology, emphasizing observable behavior and dismissing unobservable mental states. This approach preferred studying stimuli and responses, advocating for empirical measurement over speculative introspection about mental processes. Despite its empirical focus, we argue against such restrictive behaviorism on two fronts. It underestimates scientific progress's potential for uncovering unobservable entities, and it risks neglecting how complex cognitive functions arise from innate structures within the mind. This has ushered in a cognitive renaissance, turning attention to the dynamic inner workings that behaviorism often overlooked in its empirical quest. Cognitive psychology emerged as a powerful discipline, surpassing behaviorism by focusing on the brain's role as an information processing system. This paradigm shift emphasized understanding the mind's functional architecture and how various cognitive systems like perception, memory, and reasoning interact. By drawing on diverse evidence sources, including neural imaging and studies on brain-damaged patients, cognitive psychology seeks to map mental functions comprehensively. Though introducing new challenges, this paradigm offers a promising outlook for incorporating desires and emotions into a broader scientific framework that recognizes the rich complexity of human and animal cognition alike. The computational view of cognition asserts that mental processes resemble computer operations, involving symbolic manipulation based on defined rules. This perspective aligns with the cognitive paradigm's emphasis on understanding perception and language as forms of information processing. Chomsky's influence was pivotal, advocating for innate grammatical knowledge driving potential linguistic behavior, supported by empirical evidence. However, the conversation continues to evolve as critics of this model argue alternative systems like connectionism, networks inspired by neural structures, could offer more natural representation forms that better reflect cognitive complexity. Hence, the debate between classical computation and newer models remains vibrant and evolving. Connectionism, drawing from the brain's network-like structure, represents a shift from symbolic computations toward distributed, parallel processes akin to neural operations. Unlike classical models, these networks do not rely on symbolic representations, but instead use distributed representation to process information. This approach highlights resilient cognitive functions and models pattern recognition effectively, sometimes outperforming classical algorithms. Though still facing challenges, particularly in areas like problem-solving or complex reasoning, connectionism presents a compelling alternative perspective on cognition, questioning assumptions about mental processing and urging us to reconceptualize traditional views of cognition's symbolic representation. Folk psychology refers to the nuanced way we interpret human behavior through concepts like beliefs, desires, and emotions. It's this everyday understanding that helps us predict why someone might act a certain way. Far from being mere speculation, these insights offer a valid, if informal, framework for understanding psychology. The challenge lies in how this folk wisdom intertwines, or doesn't, with scientific psychology. While some argue both are complementary, others see them at odds, raising the need to discern if our intuitive beliefs hold any causal power. At its core, folk psychology is about making sense of human interaction through relatable narratives rather than complex data sets. In contrast, scientific psychology takes an empirical approach, using rigorous methods to test theories of behavior and cognition. While folk psychology is subjective and varies between cultures, scientific psychology aims to find universal truths. This empirical approach often dismisses folk concepts as unscientific, questioning their validity. The science is focused on uncovering observable, measurable phenomena, which often leaves little room for the intangible, subjective nature of folk psychology. However, the interplay between these two fields begs the question: can science ignore something as deeply embedded in human understanding as folk psychology? The debate between realism and anti-realism in psychology questions whether mental states like beliefs and desires truly exist. Realists hold that these states are real and impact behavior causally, while anti-realists argue that our perceptions don't necessarily reflect reality. Realists suggest that admitting the existence of such states could enrich scientific theories, while anti-realists caution against over-relying on intuitive concepts that aren't empirically proven. This discussion taps into broader philosophical questions about consciousness and the nature of reality, challenging us to either uphold or dismantle the concepts we've long accepted. Proponents of realism argue that folk psychology has stood the test of time, effectively predicting behavior across diverse contexts. By assuming that people act based on their beliefs and desires, it forms patterns that are observable and relatable. Realism is seen as a natural ontological attitude, fostering a competitive development of theories in psychology. It suggests that folk psychology is not just a soft science, but a foundational theory with genuine explanatory power, ultimately contributing to our understanding of human behavior in ways that resonate intuitively. Eliminative materialism proposes a radical departure. Some thinkers suggest that our folk concepts of mind, such as beliefs, might be entirely wrong. According to this view, folk psychology might be like outdated scientific theories, waiting to be replaced by sophisticated neuroscientific explanations. While it seems drastically counterintuitive, proponents believe that future advances might show our current understanding of the mind as fundamentally flawed. Critics argue this viewpoint underestimates the robustness of human intuition, but it does challenge us to reconsider whether our mental categories reflect reality or are merely convenient fictions. Philosophers like Davidson and Dennett offer alternative views on folk psychology, challenging realism by suggesting it's more interpretative than factual. Davidson views folk psychology as a schema for creating tailored theories for individuals, while Dennett sees it as a practical stance in predicting behavior. These perspectives argue that folk psychology is less about uncovering truths and more about providing a useful framework for navigating human interactions. They emphasize interpretation and prediction, highlighting the practical utilities rather than the ontological reality of mental states. Despite its critics, folk psychology remains deeply embedded in how people relate to one another in daily life. It facilitates social interactions and helps in understanding others' actions, allowing us to respond appropriately. Its practical impact is evident. From forming friendships to negotiating conflicts, folk psychology plays an indispensable role. Even if its scientific grounding is questioned, its practical efficacy seems unchallenged. It serves not just as a tool for understanding others, but also as a map for navigating everyday human affairs, acting as an intuitive guide through complex social landscapes. For scientific psychology, ignoring folk concepts seems virtually impossible when the aim is to fully understand human behavior. Folk psychology's intuitive insights can serve as a foundation upon which more rigid scientific theories are built. As science delves deeper into brain functions and cognitive processes, integrating binary viewpoints of scientific and folk psychology could benefit both fields. Long-term, this blending could lead to breakthrough theories that balance rigor with insight, offering more comprehensive explanations of the human mind. Marrying the subjective with the objective could provide an enriched understanding of behavior. Looking ahead, one must consider how folk and scientific psychology might co-evolve. If folk psychology is gradually augmented by empirical findings, this could lead to refined models that embrace shared insights. Such integration could mean modifications to both paradigms, while retaining their core strengths. This progressive intertwining could spur innovative methodologies, bridging the gap between intuitive knowledge and scientific evidence. The future might not necessitate the discarding of one for the other, but rather encourage a collaborative evolution that exploits the strengths and mitigates the limitations of both. The interplay between folk and scientific psychology is a dance between intuition and empiricism. Folk psychology offers a rich trove of insights, albeit informally structured, whereas scientific psychology brings rigorous methods to the table. This tension between subjective understanding and objective knowledge invites ongoing examination, but also promises unity. Instead of seeing these perspectives as rivals, recognizing their complementary nature could lead to a more unified psychological science. Together, they have the potential to provide a comprehensive portrait of the mind, revealing not only how we think, but why we think the way we do. The concept of modularity suggests that the human mind is composed of distinct, autonomous subsystems or modules, each responsible for different cognitive functions. These modules operate semi-independently, processing specific types of input and generating particular outputs. Modularity simplifies the complexity of mental processing by dividing cognitive tasks among specialized modules, allowing for more efficient and focused functioning. The idea, primarily advocated by philosopher Jerry Fodor, posits that these modules are akin to departments of the mind, each equipped to handle specific challenges. This perspective not only highlights our brain's architectural organization, but also opens doors to understanding how we process information, react to stimuli, and develop skills. Nativism argues that certain cognitive abilities are predetermined by our genetic makeup, suggesting that nature plays a crucial role alongside nurture in human development. This theory counters John Locke's proposition that the mind is a blank slate molded solely by experience. Nativist thought posits that inherent structures within the brain enable humans to learn languages, solve problems, and recognize emotions. This innate framework is considered essential for quick and adaptive learning, providing an evolutionary advantage. By emphasizing the role of genetic programming, nativism offers explanations for common cognitive patterns observed across diverse cultures and populations, underscoring the universality of human thought processes. In contrast to nativism, the empiricist view, rooted in John Locke's writings, contends that all knowledge comes from sensory experience. Locke famously argued against innate principles, suggesting that the mind begins as a blank slate, with learning occurring through interaction with the environment. This perspective dominated scientific thought for centuries, influencing fields like psychology and philosophy. While empiricism emphasizes the importance of environmental stimuli in shaping the mind, recent research in cognitive science challenges its sufficiency, highlighting the limitations of learning from experience alone and reigniting discussions on the balance between inherited abilities and learned skills. From an evolutionary standpoint, modularity is seen as an adaptation that enhances survival by allowing specific responses to distinct environmental challenges. Early human ancestors developed specialized systems to solve recurrent problems, leading to the evolution of modular cognitive functions. These systems, such as those for language or face recognition, are thought to provide efficiency and precision, minimizing the brain's need to process extraneous information. By having dedicated modules, the brain can swiftly address vital survival tasks, supporting the theory that modularity offers a competitive advantage in the evolutionary landscape. This evolutionary perspective is pivotal in understanding how certain cognitive structures have persisted and evolved. A key nativist argument is the problem of acquisition, which questions how children rapidly acquire language and complex skills with limited environmental input. This phenomenon suggests that general cognitive abilities cannot wholly account for such swift learning. Noam Chomsky's Cartesian linguistics highlighted the need for an innate framework to explain linguistic competence. This argument extends beyond language, hinting at pre-wired cognitive modules that facilitate learning across various domains. The idea is that these inborn structures enable children to extract rules and patterns from scarce data, supporting the notion that some cognitive capacities are less environment-dependent than traditionally believed. Observations in developmental psychology provide compelling evidence for modularity. Studies on infants' abilities reveal early manifestations of modular cognition, with newborns showing preferences and responses to face-like shapes and number variations. These findings suggest that certain cognitive functions are present far earlier than previously thought, challenging the notion of the mind as a blank slate. Infants' remarkable capacities, such as recognizing their caregivers or anticipating object behavior, point to specialized modules that are innately primed, supporting nativist theories. This developmental evidence underscores the significance of inborn cognitive structures in shaping early learning and adaptation. Case studies of individuals with neurological impairments offer insights into the modularity of the human mind. Conditions like specific language impairment, Down syndrome, and autism reveal distinct and isolated cognitive deficits, suggesting separate modules govern different cognitive domains. The selective impact of brain lesions on tasks such as language processing or facial recognition further emphasizes modular organization. These dissociations, where certain abilities remain intact while others are impaired, indicate that cognitive functions are not all-encompassing but rather specialized, reinforcing the modular hypothesis. Such cases highlight the practical application of modularity in understanding and diagnosing cognitive disorders. Jerry Fodor's influential theory presents modules as domain-specific, isolated, and encapsulated systems responsible for processing sensory input. According to Fodor, these systems are swift and mandatory, operating with minimal influence from general intelligence or background knowledge. This view gestures towards an efficient and diverse cognitive architecture. However, critiques argue that not all modules are wholly isolated. For instance, the interaction between visual imagery and visual perception suggests some degree of information crossover. Additionally, central cognitive processes like decision-making and reasoning challenge the strict input-output model, indicating a more interconnected and flexible system than Fodor initially proposed. Central cognitive modules, also known as conceptual modules, extend the idea of modularity beyond sensory input to include decision-making and reasoning processes. These specialized systems handle abstract and complex cognitive tasks, such as mind reading, causal reasoning, and cheater detection. Unlike peripheral modules, central modules process internal beliefs, desires, and intentions, integrating information across various domains. The existence of these modules suggests that even higher-order cognitive functions might be organized around specific, evolutionarily beneficial tasks. This challenges the notion of a unified cognitive system, proposing instead a more compartmentalized approach to understanding human thought and behavior. Integrating the scientific understanding of modularity with our everyday folk psychology involves recognizing the layered complexity of our cognitive systems. While folk psychology traditionally accounts for beliefs, desires, and reasoning in broad terms, modular theories propose a more detailed, segmented cognitive architecture. By acknowledging modules as building blocks for these mental states, we can bridge scientific insights with intuitive understanding. This approach maintains the validity of folk psychology while enriching it with a nuanced perspective on mental processes, aiming for a cohesive view that aligns scientific rigor with human experience. This reconciliation fosters a more holistic appreciation of our cognitive makeup. Mind reading, also referred to as folk psychology or theory of mind, TUM, is a crucial cognitive ability that allows individuals to infer the thoughts, feelings, and intentions of others. It plays an essential role in social interactions, enabling cooperation, competition, and empathy. According to research, this ability might not be learned through experience, but could be an innate part of our cognitive toolkit, maturing naturally as children grow. At the heart of the theory, mind reading is believed to involve a central cognitive module that processes core theoretical knowledge, providing a unified approach to understanding diverse psychological phenomena. Two leading theories vie to explain how we develop mind-reading capabilities: theory theory and simulation theory. Theory theory suggests that our mind-reading abilities arise from theoretical knowledge about mental states, which we use to predict and interpret others' behaviors. It posits that this knowledge base is innate, supported by evidence indicating similar developmental timelines across different children. On the flip side, simulation theory proposes that we can mentally simulate the perspective of others, using our cognitive processes to predict how someone else might feel or act. The ongoing debate between these theories fuels research into the nature and scope of human cognitive development. In the journey to develop a mature understanding of other minds, children pass through several cognitive stages. Initially, they engage in goal psychology, interpreting actions as goal-driven. As they progress, they learn desire perception psychology, understanding that people's actions are based on desires influenced by perceived facts. Finally, they achieve belief-desire psychology, appreciating that beliefs can be false and differentiating between appearance and reality. This developmental trajectory suggests a structured maturation process rather than one purely shaped by environmental input. Through each stage, children refine their understanding of mental states, shaping their ability to navigate complex social landscapes. Despite varying cultural narratives and vocabulary around the mind, research reveals striking developmental consistencies in mind-reading abilities across the globe. Children typically reach key milestones, like understanding false beliefs around the same ages, lending weight to the notion of innate cognitive modules. While cultural influences can shape how these skills are expressed or articulated, the core developmental path remains remarkably similar. This suggests that fundamental cognitive processes are deeply rooted in our biology, with experiential and cultural factors adding layers rather than altering the foundational development itself. Simulation theory posits that we use mental simulation to anticipate others' actions, imagining ourselves in their situations to predict responses. While consciously adopting another's perspective can enhance empathy and interpersonal understanding, this theory faces challenges in explaining how simulation alone can lead to complex mind reading. Critics argue that it might only complement a theoretically driven understanding, aiding in specific situations, rather than serving as a standalone mechanism. Despite this, simulation remains a crucial practice in understanding human behavior, highlighting our capacity to mentally inhabit other perspectives and align with their motivations and potential actions. Theory posits that self-knowledge arises from the theoretical recognition of mental states. This perspective suggests that while we might introspectively acknowledge our thoughts and feelings, such awareness is colored by an underlying theoretical framework about what these mental states entail. Challenges arise in equating introspective awareness to knowledge, particularly as it concerns attributing states like belief, desire, or intention to oneself. Thus, theory emphasizes the complex interplay between innate schemas and reflective observations, providing a comprehensive view of self-awareness as both a cognitive and metacognitive achievement. Autism spectrum disorder offers critical insights into mind-reading abilities. Characterized by challenges in social interaction and communication, autism can be seen as a specific impairment in theory of mind. Individuals with autism often struggle with tasks requiring false belief understanding, supporting the theory that mind reading might involve specialized cognitive modules. By examining these deficits alongside typically developing children, autism highlights the modular and innate aspects of mind reading, illustrating how disruptions in this system impact social functionality. It also invites exploration of how culture and environment might support or hinder these cognitive processes. Pretend play is a hallmark of childhood development, often linked to growing mind-reading capabilities. Through make-believe scenarios, children explore various perspectives, enhancing their understanding of others' minds. However, the absence of spontaneous pretend play in autistic children highlights potential deficits in mental representation and agency perception, key components in developing a theory of mind. The link between pretend play and mind reading underscores the importance of imaginative engagement in cognitive growth, suggesting that mentally simulating different roles could be foundational in developing sophisticated social cognition. Developing the ability to think counterfactually, considering what-if scenarios, signals sophisticated cognitive processing, closely tied to mind-reading abilities. This type of reasoning allows individuals to foresee consequences, plan strategically, and navigate complex social situations. Both theory and simulation theory meet challenges here. While hypotheticals involve simulation-like processes, they also demand an understanding of mental states, supporting theory's comprehensive scope. Analyzing deficits in counterfactual reasoning, particularly in autistic individuals, sheds light on the intricate connections between theory of mind, executive functions, and overall cognitive development, illustrating the multifaceted nature of human thought. As research progresses, the debate between theory and simulation theory continues to invigorate investigations into mind reading. Future explorations may delve deeper into the neurological underpinnings of these abilities, understanding the brain circuits involved in simulating or theorizing about others' mental states. Additionally, examining cross-species mind-reading capacities can offer insights into the evolutionary roots of these skills. Ultimately, clarifying the interplay between innate modules and experiential learning will enhance our comprehension of mind reading, potentially informing applications in education, therapy, and artificial intelligence, paving the way for advancements in understanding complex human interactions. Philosophers and psychologists often disagree on whether humans are rational. Philosophers tend to argue that rationality is ingrained in human nature, suggesting a foundation for logical behavior. On the other hand, psychological studies frequently highlight irrational tendencies, demonstrating how people make illogical decisions even in simple tasks. This divergence hints at the complexity of rationality, indicating that what may appear irrational can sometimes be understood within broader, context-specific frameworks. Irrationality is not a one-dimensional concept. It can manifest in various forms, particularly in the distinction between beliefs and desires. While desires are often seen as beyond the realm of rational evaluation, beliefs represent a clearer ground for assessing rationality. The complexity of human desires adds layers to how we understand rationality, challenging the notion that irrationality can be cleanly marked or universally defined. The cognitive abilities inherent to humans impose natural limits on rationality. Despite our intentions, cognitive constraints shape how we process information and make decisions. These constraints suggest that standards of rationality need to be aligned with human capabilities. Our finite nature requires a shift in understanding rationality, not as a universal norm, but as a relativity that acknowledges human cognitive limitations. Extensive research, such as the well-known Wason selection task, highlights frequent irrational choices. Participants often fail to logically deduce correct answers in reasoning tests, emphasizing a discrepancy between theoretical rationality and practical human reasoning. This evidence points to cognitive processes that prioritize ease and efficiency over strict adherence to logical standards, an aspect critical to understanding human behavior in real-world scenarios. For a belief to be rational, it needs to be formed through a logical process. Studies suggest that most human beliefs are born from rational reasoning processes despite occasional irrational outcomes. However, when beliefs are influenced by external factors like coercion or manipulation, their rational status can be compromised, showing how context and process influence the rationality of beliefs. Evolutionary psychology suggests the existence of a cheater detection module, a cognitive adaptation developed to monitor fairness in social exchanges. This module is hypothesized to have evolved as a protection strategy against exploitation in cooperative societies. Results from deontic reasoning tasks indicate improved performance when participants perceive the tasks involve social contracts, reaffirming the evolutionary importance of this module. Relevance theory argues that human cognition is tuned to prioritize relevant information efficiently. This involves balancing cognitive effects with processing efforts. Applying this theory to reasoning, people focus on information with immediate relevance and manageable processing demands, explaining why certain logical tasks, such as those involving negation, are particularly challenging. Rationality can be bifurcated into practical and theoretical domains. Practical rationality is grounded in achieving goals with available resources, while theoretical rationality adheres to classic norms derived from logic and mathematics. Often, real-life situations demand the adoption of practical rationality, where quick and satisfactory solutions trump ideal theoretical rationality. Developing normative standards for reasoning is a dynamic process. Philosophers and psychologists must work together to establish practical standards that align with human reasoning capabilities. This collaboration is crucial in evolving scientific approaches to better understand human decision-making and improve our reasoning methodologies in light of new evidence and theories. Rationality must be seen through the lens of human experience, accounting for our cognitive limits and practical necessities. By reframing rational standards around human needs and capabilities, we can develop an understanding that balances logical ideals with the inherent nature of human thought processes. This approach allows for a more inclusive view of human behavior, recognizing rationality within its real-world context. In psychology, content can be understood as either wide or narrow. Wide content considers the connections between mental states and the external world, positing that what a person thinks is tied to real-world references. Narrow content, on the other hand, focuses on the mind itself, abstracting from worldly connections. This distinction is crucial because it affects how we understand human cognition and behavior. Proponents of wide content argue it reflects how we naturally think about the world, while narrow content advocates believe it better isolates the cognitive processes at play. The choice between wide and narrow content isn't merely academic. It affects the foundations of both folk and scientific psychology. If science relies on narrow content while everyday thinking leans toward the wide, there might be a disjoint. This could mean scientific findings appear to contradict common sense, challenging the coherence of our understanding of human psychology. Moreover, the debate influences how we might eventually naturalize consciousness, aligning it with scientific principles. Philosophers like McDowell argue that this debate touches on epistemology, the theory of knowledge itself. If we accept narrow content, it might introduce a barrier between the mind and the world, similar to the divide posited by Cartesian philosophy. This intermediary could intensify skepticism, questioning whether we can truly know the world. Yet, narrow content theorists contend that while thoughts maintain truth conditions based on worldly items, they are fundamentally distinct from their external reference. Influenced by Frege, the theory of content differentiates between reference and sense. Where reference ties thoughts to real-world objects and states, sense refers to the manner of presenting these references. Thus, identical references can manifest distinctly in cognition. This complex relationship highlights why, for instance, Venus and the evening star can evoke different beliefs despite their similar truth conditions. Such distinctions complicate our understanding of mental content and how deeply it's entwined with linguistic expression. Wide content faces challenges notably illustrated by Putnam's twin Earth thought experiment. He posited a planet identical to Earth except for a difference in water's chemical composition. This reveals that thought content might change based on context, highlighting the limitations of wide content in uniformity. Other philosophers, like Burge, extend these concerns, examining how linguistic communities shape thought content, suggesting again that meaning ain't in the head and resides partly in social contexts. Narrow content's defenders, like Fodor, argue for its coherence and necessity. They suggest that narrow content reflects stable cognitive processes, even under hallucinations or false beliefs, maintaining explanatory power. While wide content might fluctuate based on context, narrow content remains consistent internally, offering a robust basis for psychological explanation unimpeded by external circumstances. It predicts behavior by emphasizing mental states over external references. A key question in this debate is how content relates to psychological causation. Can external references truly influence mental processes in a causally relevant way, or is the real action happening within the cognitive architecture itself? Narrow content theories emphasize the proximate causal processes in the brain as the material basis of psychological states, claiming that explanations in psychology should focus on these local, non-relational properties to truly understand behavior. In everyday life, both wide and narrow content play roles. Folk psychology, our intuitive way of explaining and predicting behavior, often leans on wide content by integrating our experiences with the world. However, narrow content is suggested to prevail in scientific contexts, providing a clearer project for developing a grounded understanding of mental states. This dual approach allows psychology to interface realistically with both subjective experiences and objective phenomena. Content can be understood as serving different functions, semantic and explanatory. Explanatory content aligns with narrow content, focusing on internal cognitive processes critical for understanding and predicting behavior. Semantic content relates to wide content, emphasizing the real-world meaning and truth conditions, useful for communication and belief sharing. Recognizing these twin aspects clarifies the purposes served by different content types in both academic and common-sense thinking. Ultimately, this debate highlights the vibrant complexity of understanding mental content. While narrow content offers scientific robustness, wide content reflects a more holistic picture, integrating our interactions with the world. Acknowledging these perspectives allows both folk and scientific psychology to coexist, each benefiting from the insights offered by their respective focuses on different facets of mental content. This approach can bridge the gap between our intuitive understandings and rigorous scientific models. At the heart of the debate in naturalizing semantics is the quest to bridge the gap between the natural sciences and the representational nature of mental states. This complex challenge arises due to skepticism about how neural patterns can naturally embody meaning without relying on human interpretation. The field has birthed several ambitious projects aimed at defining semantic properties in natural terms. These projects diverge in methodology but share a common goal: to align mental content with the principles of natural science. The pursuit invites a close examination of whether fully reductive semantics are necessary, or if semantics can find their place within scientific psychology without such reduction. Informational semantics hinges on the concept of causal covariance, the idea that meaning arises from causal interactions between the mind and the world. According to this view, a mental term holds meaning based on its consistent causal relationship with specific objects or states. For example, the term mouse signifies mice because its conceptual activation co-varies directly with mice presence. While this framework is deeply naturalistic, leveraging causation and familiar worldly properties, challenges arise in addressing misrepresentation and the disjunction problem. These issues question how a state can misrepresent reality if meaning is solely based on causal relationships. A key dilemma in informational semantics is the problem of misrepresentation, where beliefs and thoughts often inaccurately depict the world. This contradiction highlights a significant hurdle. How can a causal covariance system account for errors in representation? The issue, known as the disjunction problem, complicates the understanding of misrepresentation by posing scenarios where multiple causes might incorrectly influence meaning. Proposed solutions, such as Fodor's model using asymmetric causal dependencies, offer partial resolutions but also reveal intricacies in defining semantic content purely in causal terms. This suggests that semantics might require a more nuanced framework beyond mere causal covariance. Teleological semantics presents a compelling alternative by grounding semantic properties in evolution and biological function. This approach posits that mental content is determined by the functional roles that have been selected through evolutionary history. By viewing the mind as an evolved system, this framework assigns purpose to representational content based on its contribution to survival and adaptation. Thus, teleosemantics seeks to naturalize meaning by embedding semantic functions in the biological order. While this perspective provides clarity on why certain semantic structures exist, it also invites debates on historical versus contemporary functions, raising questions about how flexible this model truly is. Despite its evolutionary basis, teleological semantics faces significant challenges, particularly with the notion of indeterminacy in content representation. The approach struggles with reliably distinguishing between properties that are co-instantiated in natural environments. Fodor critiques this by highlighting scenarios like the frog snapping reflex, where simple perceptual mechanisms are difficult to define with precision. To differentiate semantically, teleosemantics might need to integrate counterfactual reasoning or embrace a broader scope of functional roles to resolve inherent ambiguities. These hurdles highlight the complexity of accurately modeling the functions that underpin semantic representation, requiring a careful balance of evolutionary and functional insights. Functional role semantics shifts the focus from historical narratives to the present-day roles that mental states play within cognitive systems. This approach characterizes semantic content by delineating the causal relationships and functional roles these states have in cognition. By concentrating on how states contribute to current mental processes rather than their evolutionary history, functional role semantics provides a contemporary lens. This model gains traction by marrying semantic content with the cognitive architectures that uphold mental processes, offering a dynamic yet structured account of representation within the complexities of thought and perception. While functional role semantics offers promise by focusing on present cognitive roles, It also contends with the charge of holism and content indeterminacy. Critics argue that its broad capture of inferential relationships could render content idiosyncratic, differing subtly between individuals. This holistic nature poses challenges for scientific psychology, which seeks generalizable principles. However, by harnessing the idea of functional potential rather than actual causal interactions, researchers may refine this approach. Further exploration could lead to integrating crafted naturalistic explanations guiding both inferential content while accommodating the interplay between individual cognitive architectures and broader psychological principles. A central contention across semantic theories is whether naturalization mandates reduction. Though commonly conflated, naturalizing semantics need not imply a reductive analytic stance. Many struggle to reduce high-level psychological phenomena into basic physical terms due to the phenomenon of multiple realizability. This realization suggests that pursuing naturalization may adequately reside in affirming semantic content's role within established psychological sciences. From this perspective, the goal shifts towards pragmatically grounding psychology in natural sciences without necessitating concepts' distillation into elementary scientific terms, thus aligning more harmoniously with the necessary diversity inherent in scientific exploration. Philosophers exploring semantics face abundant opportunities and challenges in further grounding semantic naturalization. Instead of striving solely for reductive analyses from a theoretical armchair, a more productive path may involve interdisciplinary collaborations towards elucidating necessary conditions for semantic properties. The pursuit aligns speculative philosophy with empirical advancements, leveraging conceptual investigations to outline the conditions and constraints shaping thought. By moving beyond the dichotomy of reductionism, philosophers contribute valuable perspectives that ground semantics within the ever-evolving scientific dialogue, ensuring that advanced conceptual models coherently integrate with scientific principles rooted in naturalistic observations. In conclusion, naturalization of semantics requires navigating complex intellectual terrains with flexibility and openness to multiple viable strategies. By examining informational, teleological, and functional role semantics, scholars craft a tapestry woven from function, causality, and inference. Each model contributes unique insights, inviting further exploration and adaptation to tackle enduring questions about naturalizing meaning. As the landscape evolves, the interplay between philosophical reflection and empirical science remains vital for crafting comprehensive, coherent frameworks. This integrative journey promises deepened understanding as we continue to delve into how the structures of the mind resonate with the ontology of the natural world. In the realm of cognitive science, mentalese represents the language of thought, positing that our cognitive processes share similarities with language systems. Proponents argue that thinking isn't just a collection of mental images or vague notions, but rather a systematic, productive form of mental representation. This includes the ability to handle abstract ideas or logical operators, which cannot be captured by images alone. Mentalese provides a conceptual framework where thought unfolds in a structured, language-like pattern, capable of forming complex ideas and facilitating precise reasoning. While traditional views suggest that mental images are fundamental to thought, this notion falters when faced with non-visual concepts. Critics highlight that images can only supplement, not replace, the complex nature of cognitive representations. The debate extends to whether our mental processes mirror natural language patterns. Some researchers propose that thinking in mentalese allows abstract propositional reasoning, crucial for interacting beliefs and desires, forming intentions, and maintaining systematicity and productivity within cognition. Connectionism offers a compelling alternative, suggesting that cognitive processes emerge from interactions within neural networks. Unlike the linear structure of mentalists, connectionism emphasizes distributed representations, arguing that cognition is more about patterns of activation across the brain rather than a language-like system. This perspective highlights the brain's capacity for parallel processing and gradual memory degradation, challenging the assumption of distinct mental states governed by a language of thought. However, it faces criticism for potentially overlooking the importance of semantic clustering and causal linkage within cognitive functions. The systematic nature of thought, whether through mentalese or connectionist models, is rooted in semantic content. This involves understanding the relationships between beliefs, desires, and intentions, essential for coherent and productive thinking. Connectionist models propose that distributed networks could foster complex activations mirroring these systematic relationships, even without a language-like structure. Nevertheless, the framing issue, how relevant data is processed in cognitive tasks, raises questions about the feasibility of a holistic approach, where all evidence impacts belief fixation. Critics argue that real-time thinking requires more modular approaches. Natural language's influence on cognition is profound, offering both scaffolding and constitution for cognitive processes. It aids in higher-level reasoning, memory, and social interactions, potentially intertwining with cognitive functions at multiple levels. Some theories suggest that the evolution of language catalyzed cognitive development, transforming early human thinking capabilities. The interplay between language and thought suggests that natural language can shape cognitive processes through inner speech, expanding our ability to engage in conscious, complex reasoning and decision-making. Throughout history, theories about language and thought have evolved, influenced by seminal works in cognitive science. Researchers like Fodor pioneered the language of thought hypothesis, proposing that our mental representations mirror the structure of language. This idea has been expanded upon by various scholars, examining how language enhances cognitive processes. From Vygotsky's insights on thought development to Dennett's exploration of language's role in reasoning, these contributions illuminate how language serves as a pivotal tool in shaping human cognition, reflecting a deep-seated connection between our mental and linguistic capabilities. The interplay between mentalese and connectionism showcases the ongoing debate over cognitive models. While mentalese offers a structured approach to thought representation, connectionism posits a more dynamic, network-based perspective. Critics of connectionism point to potential issues with semantic clarity and causal efficacy, emphasizing the need for a more unified understanding. The blending of these models leads to questions about how they align with folk psychology, our everyday understanding of the mind, and whether they align with real-world cognitive challenges. Ultimately, these theories must reconcile how thoughts and language coalesce to form our cognitive experiences. Cognitive holism suggests that belief fixation should consider all relevant evidence, implying a comprehensive approach to understanding thought processes. This model contrasts with more modular theories, which advocate focused, context-driven processing. The feasibility of this holistic approach is questioned in real-time scenarios, where rapid decision-making often necessitates more compartmentalized processing. Researchers explore how cognitive holism could function in everyday thinking, balancing the need for comprehensive evidence consideration with the practicalities of efficient cognitive functioning. This discussion highlights the challenges of integrating holistic principles within our cognitive models. Language evolution has played a critical role in shaping human cognition. Theories like Dennett's suggest that the advent of language marked a significant cognitive leap, allowing for refined reasoning and social communication. Language, seen as a Joycean machine, represents a transformative era in human history, intertwining with cognitive processes to enhance our mental abilities. However, this view is contrasted by evidence of sophisticated pre-linguistic thinkers, challenging the notion that language is the sole catalyst for cognitive advancement. Ongoing research explores how language evolution and cognitive development are interlinked, shaping our understanding of cognitive evolution. Debate persists over whether natural language serves merely as a scaffold for cognitive processes or constitutes a core component. Language aids in organizing thoughts, enhancing memory, and facilitating reasoning, yet it may also underpin higher-order cognitive functions. Researchers like Frankish suggest language provides a basis for advanced cognitive levels, linking linguistic constructs to belief formation and decision-making. This interplay reflects a modular system where cognition centers around linguistic interfacing, promoting explicit propositional thinking. Ultimately, uncovering the role of natural language in cognition remains crucial in understanding its fundamental impact on human thought. Consciousness often feels like an enigmatic concept, especially when delving into the domain of phenomenal consciousness. This branch concerns the unique subjective feel of our experiences, something philosophers like Nagel and Chalmers have dubbed the hard problem of science. Despite the perception of its impenetrability, the scientific approach continues to advance, suggesting that consciousness is not beyond understanding. Distinctions such as creature consciousness, which concerns an organism's general awareness, and mental state consciousness, relating to specific mental states, offer frameworks for scientific exploration. While it's challenging, there's ongoing debate about its potential explanation in scientific terms. In exploring consciousness, understanding the nuances of creature and mental state consciousness is crucial. Creature consciousness refers to an organism being awake and responsive, which can be divided further into intransitive consciousness, a basic state of wakefulness, and transitive consciousness, the awareness of something specific. Mental state consciousness, on the other hand, involves the consciousness of particular mental states. This can further be categorized into phenomenal consciousness, which is the subjective experience, and access consciousness, which is functionally defined. Each of these distinctions plays a role in the broader scientific inquiry into understanding how consciousness operates. Phenomenal consciousness represents one of the toughest challenges in the scientific landscape. It's about the subjective feel or the what it's like aspect of experience, which many argue is difficult to reduce to physical or functional explanations. Thought experiments such as inverted qualia and zombies question whether consciousness can be fully explained through current scientific means. Despite the complexity, there are theories suggesting that these phenomenal experiences might be representational or functional in nature, providing a potential pathway to weave them into a naturalistic framework. The dialogue around these concepts continues to be a dynamic part of consciousness studies. Theories such as higher-order thought, HOT, and higher-order experience, HOE, aim to illuminate the nature of phenomenal consciousness. Hot theories suggest that consciousness arises from thoughts about one's own mental processes, while HOE focuses on perceptions of these processes. These theories propose explanations for the differences between conscious and non-conscious mental states. For instance, instances like absent-minded driving or blind sight. Patients highlight how certain actions and perceptions can occur without conscious awareness. Despite the debate and intricacies involved, HOT and HOE provide compelling frameworks for understanding our conscious experience. Dispositionalist approaches to HOT theories argue for a specialized short-term memory store, called C, essential for conscious experience. This system is said to supply higher-order thoughts with the ability to confer subjectivity upon first-order perceptual content. It's posited that the mind-reading faculty, responsible for interpreting perceptual content in higher-order terms, is a core component of consciousness development. This approach addresses complex issues like the cognitive overload problem faced by actualist theories. Through evolutionary perspectives, dispositionalist HOT proposes a plausible functional trajectory for the emergence of consciousness in humans. Philosopher Daniel Dennett offers a distinctive take with his higher-order description theory, HOD, suggesting consciousness can be explained through linguistic availability and internal speech. Dennett argues that inserting thoughts between experience and linguistic expression is unnecessary, positing a Joycean machine in the brain where consciousness arises through language-based internal dialogue. Critics of Dennett question this stance, arguing that higher-order thoughts can exist independently of language, as evidenced by individuals without conventional linguistic capabilities. Nevertheless, Dennett's viewpoint remains a stimulating part of the broader discourse on understanding how consciousness functions within the human mind. The Mysterians, a group including philosophers like Nagel and McGinn, maintain that consciousness may forever elude scientific explanation due to the limits of human cognition. They propose the idea of cognitive closure, the notion that our brains might simply be unequipped to fully grasp the complexities of consciousness. In contrast, opponents argue that these limits are not as defined as the Mysterians believe. They advocate for continued exploration and innovation in cognitive science as potential paths to overcome perceived barriers, challenging the concept that consciousness is inherently mystical or unsolvable. A significant theme in consciousness studies is the distinction between different types of knowledge. Against arguments suggesting the private and ineffable nature of qualia, theorists propose that experiences are representational, focusing more on external qualities than internal mental states. This representational view challenges the traditional notion of consciousness as solely an internal phenomenon. The debate continues on whether differences in subjective experiences represent genuine disparities in conceptual understanding or simply alternate lenses through which to perceive brain events. This exploration remains a vital area in the quest to demystify qualia and consciousness. The discussion on consciousness often tangles with the distinction between theoretical knowledge, understanding facts, and practical knowledge, knowing how to do things. Thought experiments like Jackson's Mary and Nagel's subjective facts highlight this contention, proposing that gaps in understanding might be due to conceptual differences rather than factual ones. Critics suggest that recognizing the functional nature of consciousness could bridge these gaps, reframing the debate to focus on how experiences present externally rather than internally. This conceptual shift encourages new perspectives on how consciousness might be understood within the realms of science and philosophy. The study of consciousness is not about finding a definitive answer, but rather understanding a continuum of experiences and thoughts. The discourse encompasses various theories and criticisms, from Hott and HOE models to Dennett's Joycean machine and the Mysterians' cognitive closure. By integrating perspectives from evolutionary biology, cognitive science, and philosophy, researchers hope to piece together the intricate puzzle of consciousness. As debates progress and methodologies evolve, the journey to comprehend consciousness serves as a testament to human curiosity and our ceaseless quest to comprehend the nature of experience and self-awareness.